It began like any ordinary morning, the kind where the city hummed with life, coffee machines hissed, and sunlight spilled across glass windows like melted gold. But that morning, in a small corner cafe on 8th Street, silence would soon taste sharper than any espresso. A woman pushed open the door, tall, steady, carrying the quiet grace of someone used to long journeys. Her name was Amina Malik. She wore a navy blue flight jacket, travel bag slung over her shoulder, and a neat gray hijab pinned carefully beneath her chin. To most, she looked like any other traveler seeking caffeine and calm. But to a few in that room, one simple piece of fabric was enough to turn morning warmth into judgment. The doorbell chimed softly as she stepped inside. She smiled at the aroma of roasted beans, the soft hum of jazz music, the buzz of conversation. After days on duty and sleepless flights, she just wanted a cup of coffee, nothing fancy, just warmth in a cup. Behind the counter stood Jake, the young barista. He had tattoos, a messy apron, and a smirk that often said more than his words. When he looked up and saw Amina, his smile faded. He leaned toward his coworker and whispered, not quietly enough. "Here we go again, one of them. Probably can't even speak English." His coworker gave a nervous laugh, pretending not to hear. But two college students at the corner table caught every word. They exchanged grins, cruel, careless grins, as if prejudice were a joke on sale with their breakfast bagels. Amina heard it too. Of course she did. But she'd learned to let small cruelties pass, like clouds drifting over the sun. Still, something in her chest ached. She approached the counter with a soft voice that carried more confidence than he expected. "Good morning. Could I have a cappuccino, please?" Jake didn't respond. He busied himself aligning cups, pretending to be focused. Steam hissed from the espresso machine, the only sound between them. Amina waited a few seconds, then repeated gently. "A cappuccino. Medium, please." He looked up at last, his jaw tightening. "We're kind of busy right now," he said flatly. "Maybe try another cafe, down the street." The words landed like stones. People nearby looked up, not to help, but to watch. A girl with a laptop glanced at Amina's scarf, then quickly away. An older man stirred his coffee and muttered under his breath, "Always some drama." Amina blinked, unsure what hurt more, the insult, or the silence that followed. The laughter from the back table grew louder. Someone whispered. "Guess she didn't read the dress code." Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. For a heartbeat, she thought of leaving, walking out with her pride intact. But then she remembered her father's words, "Dignity isn't leaving quietly. It's standing tall, even when they try to make you small." She steadied her breath. "I understand you're busy," she said, voice calm but firm. "I can wait." Jake rolled his eyes. "Lady, I said we're closed for cleaning. Come back later." The "closed" sign still hung flipped to open behind him. For the first time, anger flickered in Amina's gaze, not rage, but a deep, quiet fire. "Closed for me, or closed for everyone?" she asked. Her question floated through the cafe, cutting the laughter short. The only sound now was the faint rhythm of the milk steamer and the ticking clock on the wall. Jake didn't answer. He just shrugged and turned away. Amina's breath trembled. The world seemed to narrow, the smell of coffee, the whispering customers, the shame pressing on her chest like a weight. She reached into her purse to pay anyway, determined not to walk out defeated. But as she opened it, her tired hands slipped. Something metallic fell, a sharp clink against the tile floor. Heads turned. The small badge slid across the floor, spinning once before landing near Jake's shoes. He frowned and bent down to pick it up. The chatter around them faded, replaced by a curious hush. He turned the badge over, reading the engraved words slowly, under his breath. United States Air Force, Captain Amina Malik. The moment froze in time. Steam rose from the coffee machine like a cloud of shame. Jake's fingers tightened around the metal, his smirk vanished. Amina, calm as ever, reached forward and took it back. "You didn't have to serve me because of my scarf," she said quietly. "But remember, I wore this uniform so you could be free enough to choose kindness, or not." No one spoke. The cafe had gone utterly still. Even the jazz track had ended, leaving only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the sound of hearts sinking. And in that heavy silence, every person realized. They hadn't just watched a woman ask for coffee. They'd watched courage wrapped in cloth walk through prejudice, and stand taller than hate itself. A few seconds passed, heavy and uncomfortable. The air inside the cafe thickened, not from steam, but from judgment. From the corner by the window, a young woman whispered just loud enough to be heard. "Why don't they just take that thing off if it bothers people so much?" Her friend nodded, stirring her latte. "Yeah, I mean, if you're in America, try to look American." An older man in a suit gave a disapproving sigh, shaking his head slowly as though Amina were a problem instead of a person. The room buzzed with unspoken thoughts, quiet, cruel, and comfortable. No one said anything to stop it. Because in moments like these, silence becomes the easiest form of approval. But Amina, she didn't shrink. She took a small step back, straightened her shoulders, and met the room with calm eyes that had seen storms far greater than this. Her voice was soft, almost trembling, yet every word struck like truth wrapped in velvet. "I just wanted coffee. Not a lesson in hate." Her tone wasn't angry. It was heartbreak, the kind that doesn't scream, but sinks deep into your soul. Jake, the barista, smirked, that same careless smirk people wear when they think cruelty makes them powerful. "Lady," he said, snapping the cash register shut, "I told you. We're closed, for you." The sound of the register slamming echoed through the cafe, louder than it should have been. It was the kind of sound that made people look down at their cups, ashamed, but unwilling to show it. Amina didn't flinch. But inside, something cracked, a quiet ache, a question she'd asked 1,000 times: why does my faith make people forget my humanity? For a long moment, no one moved. The hiss of the espresso machine stopped. The soft clink of spoons stopped. Even the jazz tune seemed to fade out, leaving only the shallow breaths of a dozen strangers pretending not to see what was happening. Amina looked around the room. Her gaze moved from face to face, from the college girl biting her lip to the older man staring into his coffee. "No one," she whispered under her breath. "Not one person." A single mother with a stroller shifted awkwardly, eyes down. A teenage boy by the wall fidgeted, guilt tugging at his face. But no one said a word. Amina's lips curved into a small, weary smile, the kind that hides 1,000 unshed tears. It wasn't just sadness. It was resignation, the acceptance that in moments of injustice, courage is often a solo act. She reached into her purse, meaning to pull out her wallet, to pay and leave quietly. But her hands were still trembling slightly, from exhaustion, from hurt, from holding too much grace for too long. Her fingers slipped. Something clinked softly against the floor again, the same metallic sound as before. Heads turned. Jake's smirk faltered. Amina blinked, realizing what had happened. Her ID badge had fallen out once more, the small rectangular card that had seen the inside of aircraft cockpits, bases, and skies across continents. She bent to pick it up, but Jake was faster this time. He crouched and lifted it, squinting at the print like he didn't believe what he was reading. "Captain Amina Malik," he murmured. "Air Force?" The color drained from his face. The older man by the window set his cup down too hard, spilling a bit of coffee onto the table. The two college girls stopped whispering. Every eye in that cafe was now fixed on her. The scarf they had mocked suddenly looked different, not strange, not foreign, but honorable. The same hijab that drew ridicule minutes ago now framed the face of a decorated officer, someone who had worn the flag they all claimed to love. Amina took the badge back gently, her voice steady. "You didn't have to respect me because of a title," she said. "You could have done it because I'm a person." No one dared to respond. Even the barista's throat tightened as he fumbled for words. I didn't know." "That's the thing," she said quietly. "You never asked." She placed a $20 bill on the counter and added softly, "Keep the change. Maybe next time, use it to buy a little kindness." The words landed heavier than any shout could have. As she turned to leave, the cafe seemed smaller, quieter, not because she had raised her voice, but because truth had lowered theirs. When the door closed behind her, no one moved for several seconds. The young woman by the window finally whispered. She was a captain. And an older man, eyes wet with shame, murmured back. "No. She's something more, she's what we should have been." The cafe door closed behind Amina with a soft chime, the kind that usually blends into background noise. But this time, it sounded like judgment leaving the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. No music. No laughter. Only the slow, guilty rhythm of spoons against porcelain. Jake stood frozen behind the counter, the $20 bill still lying there, untouched, mocking him. He stared at the spot where Amina had stood, his mind replaying every word, every smirk, every cruel shrug. The room felt colder now. The young woman by the window bit her lip. She was really in the Air Force? Her friend nodded slowly, unable to meet her eyes. "Yeah. Captain Amina Malik." The older man who'd muttered earlier looked down, guilt swimming in his reflection on the coffee surface. "All that bravery," he whispered, "and we treated her like she didn't belong." Jake swallowed hard. He'd worked this cafe for 3 years, served hundreds of people. But this moment, would brand his memory forever. He thought of his brother, a Marine, always talking about respect and sacrifice. How many times had Jake said, "I support the troops," without realizing that some of those troops wore hijabs? His co-worker, the girl at the register, finally broke the silence. "Jake, you should go after her." He blinked. "What do I even say? Start with, 'I'm sorry.' Then maybe, 'Thank you.'" He hesitated, glancing at the door, then back at the people watching him. For once, the entire cafe wanted him to do something right. Jake dropped the towel he'd been holding, grabbed his jacket, and ran outside. Underscore 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 underscore. The city street was alive with noise, cars honking, people talking, the hum of morning traffic. He looked left, then right, until he spotted her, walking slowly toward the crosswalk, her posture straight, her pace calm, as if nothing in the world could shake her dignity. "Wait," he called out. Amina turned. The sunlight caught her scarf, creating a halo of silver around her face. Jake jogged up, breathless. "Captain Malik, You don't need to call me that," she interrupted softly. "I'm just Amina." He shook his head, shame burning his cheeks. "No. You deserve the title. You earned it. I was awful in there." Amina looked at him, not with anger, but with the quiet weariness of someone who's seen too many apologies after the damage is done. "Do you know what the hardest part is?" she asked gently. "It's not the insults. It's watching good people say nothing." Jake's throat tightened. "You're right. I was one of them. I laughed. I let it happen. And now, she asked. He took a deep breath. Now I know silence is worse than hate. At least hate shows itself. Silence hides and spreads. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. That's a good start. Jake reached into his pocket, pulling out something small, the $20 bill she'd left behind. You forgot this. Amina looked at it for a long moment, then shook her head. No, Jake. You need it more than I do. He frowned, confused. For what? To buy the next person a coffee, the one who looks different. The one you might have turned away before. Jake's eyes softened. He nodded, his voice low. I will. They stood there for a moment, the morning air cool and clear between them. Behind Jake, through the cafe window, the others watched quietly, not out of curiosity, but respect. When Amina finally turned to leave, Jake called out again, his voice trembling. Amina? She paused. Thank you, for your service. She smiled faintly, eyes glistening. Then serve your heart, Jake. That's where real courage begins. And with that, she walked away, her figure small against the rising sun, her shadow stretching across the pavement like the mark of quiet strength. Inside the cafe, no one dared speak for a long time. Then, slowly, the older man stood up, went to the counter, and said, I'll take that cappuccino she ordered, and make it two. I'll pay for the next woman who walks in. Jake nodded, tears burning his eyes. Yes, sir. And for the first time that morning, the cafe felt human again. The next morning, the cafe on 8th Street opened like it always did, the same bell over the door, the same smell of roasted beans and vanilla syrup. But something had changed. It wasn't the menu. It wasn't the furniture. It was the air, softer, humbler, like guilt had finally turned into gratitude. Jake came in early. Earlier than he ever had. He wiped every table twice, brewed a fresh batch of coffee, and taped a small sign to the wall near the counter. It read, Kindness served here. Everyone welcome. He didn't tell his manager. He didn't need to. This wasn't about rules. It was about making it right. As customers started trickling in, they noticed the change. Jake greeted everyone, old, young, tired, cheerful, with a simple warmth that was new to him. Good morning. Glad you're here. Some smiled back. Some looked surprised. But every cup he handed over carried something extra, a quiet apology poured into the foam. At 9 a.m., the same young woman who'd whispered about Amina's hijab walked in again. She looked nervous, almost hesitant, clutching her books. Jake straightened. Hey, he said softly. You were here yesterday. She nodded, her cheeks coloring. Yeah. I just wanted to say I felt terrible about what happened. I didn't say anything. He handed her a latte. No charge, and replied. Then say something next time. That's how it changes. She nodded slowly, eyes shining. And for the first time, both of them smiled, not the polite kind, but the healing kind. Underscore 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 underscore. A few hours later, Jake sat by the window during his break, staring out at the busy street. Every person who passed reminded him of Amina's words. Serve your heart. That's where real courage begins. He didn't know where she was now, maybe in uniform, maybe boarding another flight, but her voice echoed like a compass inside him. He opened his phone and typed a message on the cafe's community board. To the woman in the navy blue jacket and silver hijab. I was wrong. You taught us what respect truly means. If you ever walk in again, your coffee will always be on the house." He hit post, unsure if she'd ever see it. But within hours, the post went viral in their small town. People shared it with words like, "faith restored," and, "we needed this reminder." Underscore 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 underscore. By the weekend, something beautiful began to happen. A man in a wheelchair rolled in, and no one looked away. A woman in a sari ordered tea, and Jake asked how to pronounce her name, correctly this time. A group of high schoolers started leaving sticky notes on the wall beside Jake's sign. One read, "Be like Amina." Another said, "Kindness looks good on everyone." The wall grew colorful, like a collage of compassion. Even the older man who'd judged her returned one morning. He ordered his usual black coffee and stood quietly before saying, "Son, that woman, she reminded me what respect looks like. Haven't stopped thinking about her." Jake nodded. "Me too." Late one evening, as Jake was locking up, a small envelope slid under the cafe door. He bent to pick it up. There was no name, just a neat handwriting that read, "For the one who learned to listen." Inside was a note. "We all fight battles no one sees. Some in the sky, some on the ground, some in our hearts. I'm glad you chose kindness. A.M." Jake smiled, that soft, tear-touched kind of smile that comes when a heart finally forgives itself. He folded the note gently and placed it beside the register, right next to the sign that still read, "Kindness served here." The cafe lights dimmed for the night, but the warmth stayed. A silent promise that change begins with one cup, one word, one heart at a time. And somewhere, far above the sleeping city, a pilot looked down through the clouds, whispering a quiet prayer of hope for all those still learning to see beyond the surface. Days turned into weeks, and the story of the cafe traveled farther than anyone expected. Someone had recorded part of that morning, the silence, the tension, the moment when Amina's badge hit the floor. The clip spread online like a quiet storm, viewed millions of times not because of outrage, but because of the grace that followed it. People didn't see anger in her eyes, they saw dignity. They didn't hear her shout, they heard strength in restraint. And everywhere, her words echoed. "You didn't have to respect me because of a title. You could have done it because I'm a person." Those lines became more than a quote. They became a mirror, forcing people to see who they were when no one was watching. Underscore 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 underscore. Back at the cafe, the wall of sticky notes had turned into something like a shrine to compassion. Customers brought their kids to see it, teachers printed the story for class, and a few veterans stopped by just to shake Jake's hand. He never bragged about it. He didn't tell people he'd changed. He just kept serving, quietly, humbly, one cup at a time. Every time someone wearing a hijab, a turban, or even just a different accent walked in, he'd smile and say, "Welcome home." Because that's what the cafe had become, not just a place for coffee, but for humanity. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. One gray morning, as the first raindrops kissed the windows, Jake noticed a familiar figure outside. A woman in a navy blue jacket stood by the crosswalk, umbrella in hand. Even through the drizzle, he recognized her, the calm, steady presence, the silver pin catching a sliver of light. Amina. Without thinking, he ran to the door, his voice catching in the air. Captain Malik. She turned, smiling softly. Still calling me Captain? He laughed, breathless. Always. You earned that. For a second, neither spoke. The rain tapped gently around them, like nature itself was holding its breath. Jake finally said. You changed everything here. I don't think you even realize how much. Amina tilted her head, thoughtful. I didn't change anything, Jake. I just showed what kindness looks like when it's tested. She looked up at the cafe window where the colorful notes still fluttered. You all did the rest. He smiled. Well. I had a good teacher. Amina chuckled softly, then extended her hand. Keep serving kindness. The world's always thirsty for it. They shook hands, and Jake watched as she crossed the street, her figure fading into the mist, strong and peaceful, like the morning itself bowed in respect. That night, Jake closed the cafe early and stood in the quiet, staring at the glowing, open sign. He thought about all the people who'd walked through those doors, how one act of courage from a stranger had awakened the humanity in everyone else. He whispered into the silence. Thank you, Amina, for teaching me what service really means. Then he flipped the sign to closed, smiling to himself, because kindness never really closes. Sometimes, heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes, they wear scarves, and carry their faith with quiet pride. In a world that judges what it doesn't understand. Be the one who pauses before mocking. Who listens before assuming. Who loves before labeling. Because dignity doesn't shout. It stands tall. It forgives. And it reminds us that being human is the highest rank of all.